And we're live. Welcome, unbelievers and friends and everyone alike. We have another episode of Deconversion Stories today. I am talking to Suris, the Skeptic. You know him because he's got a huge hammer, which we've all seen at the beginning of his videos. You know, and this is what the girls tell me. This is a rumor. Anyways, what we do here is we tell deconversion stories, and Suris, I believe, has quite the story, so we're going to let him take it away, and I might jump in here and there. So, well, obviously I will, but
I would hope so.
Mr. Skeptic, please tell us basically, when you first started thinking, I don't know about this shit anymore, and how it led you to the awesome atheist activist that you are today.
So it's both a long and short story. Long in the amount of time that took place, but short in the very few amount of events that took place to get us there. First thing was I think it's the first thing that anybody who knows me needs to know as far as my atheism is concerned is I grew up in a Christian school. I grew up in a young earth creationist teaching, Bible believing, Bible thumping school. I make the distinction between the two because obviously there's a difference between the more evangelical types, and this one definitely lended itself more to the evangelical type of Christianity. Granted, that said, that school was almost a totalitarian experience. You were not allowed to go out in the halls without an escort. The school could provide everything that you needed. There was a shop within the school for your school supplies, so you paid the school for your school supplies in the school, and you could go to the shop whenever you want, as long as you either had an escort or you were old enough to go on your own.
Old enough? What does that mean?
I'm saying a lot. That's really strange. So the thing with Pensacola Christian Academy is that they were a first 2 years of kindergarten all the way up to the 12th grade school. Like, they were a gigantic compound that housed thousands of students and had them from all grades. And then there was a bridge between the compound and then their other location, which was their college. So they could legitimately have a monopoly on your education from the time that you were born to the time that you left school for good. And I know a few people who actually went through the entire shtick. They also have 2 summer camps as well. So they can hold you for the entirety of your growing. Like, they can do that.
Wow.
Yeah, they were very, very, not really ruthless. That's really not the word I would use. But they definitely made sure that if you were going to go to their school, you were going to their school in every way, shape, and form possible. They also had multiple churches between the campuses as well. So if you were going to church...
Multiple? Like, are we talking different denominations? Like, one might be Baptist, one might be, that kind of thing?
So it was a multi-denominational structure, mainly because they realized that that's good for revenue, is if you're not a Catholic school, then having multiple denominations under your school is a good idea. So what they had on the actual campus itself, they had the small church, the church that you see on the side of the road, kind of, that like may or may not have a steeple, and may or may not have stained glass windows, but it is no less a church, just small. They had one of those called St. John's Church on the campus itself. And you could go to that if you wanted to. Also, they had a stage within the school that functioned as its own little church when they wanted it to. That was less an actual church, but they actually had a Joel Osteen style mega church. If you went to the college campus, one of the rooms in the college, or one of the areas in the college campus, was a multi-tiered mega church style church that, while not the size that Joel Osteen has, was certainly the structure and certainly could rival it.
Right.
So that's why I say they had multiple churches. It's not multiple denominations. They just had multiple styles of churches for, whether or not you're a kid growing up and you're going into this church. Because what they would do is, in the beginning of the school day, your school day began with a Bible study, and then you got into your classes proper. You always began with a Bible study. And when you began with your Bible study, every once in a while, they treated it like it was this event. Instead of having your Bible study in the classroom, they would pick up a bunch of the classes from a grade, and they would funnel them into the St. John's Church, and everybody would have their Bible study at the St. John's Church instead of in their classroom. So it was and again, they treated it like it was an event. So you actually you got excited to go to it because it was different than having Bible study in your classroom. You got
I could see that.
You got to have it in front of a preacher instead of in your classroom. And looking back on it, I realized that's a little manipulative. Basically going, hey, if your parents don't take you to church, we'll make sure that you know what it's like to go to church.
Right.
So not something that I'm fond of looking back on, but I was fond of it as a child. But I was also a Christian as a child, so part and parcel.
Exactly.
At about when I hit 5th grade, I realized that I no longer wanted to be at the school. I still was a Christian, but there were just certain rules in the school that I couldn't stand. Like if you were out during PE, you couldn't talk. They didn't allow kids to talk out at PE. They didn't allow you to talk during lunchtime either. During lunchtime, you got 5 minutes at the end of lunch, and it was called talk time. And that was the time that you got to actually talk with your peers, but you were not allowed to talk at any other point. Otherwise, you would get detention. Needless to say, I was in detention about every week by my last year. It's almost like talking is what I do on my YouTube channel and everything else. So, here we are.
Yeah.
But
that seems really bizarre to me, dude, that they won't allow you to converse with each other while you're having lunch.
Well, because it's better for children instead of being able to exchange ideas on campus. It's better for them to be fed them.
Sure, I get that, but wouldn't they be exchanging the ideas they're being fed?
You'd think that, but they also had a bit of a filtration system on ideas at the school. So, as an example, so let's say I talked about Pokemon at school, which a bunch of kids at school were into because I grew up during the era where that exploded. If you mentioned Pokemon or mentioned a Pokemon's name and anybody happened to know, then it would get to a teacher, and then you would get to detention, and then a note would be sent to your parents letting them know that your child is going to burn in hell.
Fuck, are you kidding?
No, I'm not.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not kidding at all. And it wasn't just Pokemon is the example, but obviously this includes anything like Harry Potter. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was one of those things that when it was new and they didn't quite know what it was yet, so they didn't know whether or not it was something they needed to demonize. Anytime you mentioned it, a teacher would come up to you and say, "What is that? Can you tell me about that?" Within a year of that happening, it became one of the banned things on campus. It just started out as something that they didn't quite understand. We actually were able to there was a group of kids that snuck on campus early in order to trade cards with their friends because it was the only time that they were ever really able to do so.
Right.
But having cards confiscated was a fairly normal occurrence. So yeah, when it came to communication, they had everything on lockdown. They made sure that if you were communicating with people in any way, shape, or form, you were either talking when they wanted you to talk, and if you were talking about what they wanted you to talk about, because if you weren't, then you'd be punished for it. So very, very totalitarian control system, which is funny that we're talking about that on the 5th of November of all things. So Guy Fawkes be damned at that point, I guess. But so around 5th grade, I got the chance to do what was called shadowing. I went to nothing but advanced magnet schools growing up, which was a lucky thing because I lived in a ghetto. So it was like you go to school and it's this advanced area, then you come home and it's the slums. It was a very interesting existence. But the school that I went to next was Brown Barge, and they had this program called the Shadow Program where you got to decide if you wanted to go to that school as a kid. So what they would do is they would pull people from the 5th grade to have one day shadowing another student at the school so they could experience what the school was like and determine whether or not they wanted to go. The reason they did this is because at your normal schools, including PCA, the schooling was very much, here's your math class, here's your English class, here's your history class, here's your science class where we lie to you about evolution.
Among other things.
Amongst other things. I was told in my science class that Darwin had a deathbed conversion. That was interesting. As that was actually in the a.k.a. book literature. If you want to go look it up, Prophet Azad can help you with that, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure. Which isn't true, by the way.
No,
just so people know.
Although he did go to seminary, so he already was trying to get into theology. So the whole deathbed conversion thing, his whole theory of evolution had nothing to do with scripture. He didn't give a shit about it when it came to the theory. If his God belief was his and he had it at a point in time, so any conversation that's had about his ability to have that theory and him like trying to spite God, it's all bullshit. But anyways, so when we got to the point where I could actually go to Brown Barge, I shadowed, and it was culture shock for a few reasons. The first reason is Brown Barge didn't have classes; they had what was called streams. So instead of having a math class or a history class or a science class, you would have a stream. So let's say you had flight stream. Instead of a history class, you would have the history of aeronautics. Instead of an English class, you would be asked during history of aeronautics to write a paper on it, where they would judge you based on criteria that an English class would judge you on. Your math class, they had to have a standard math class just because the district required it. But after that, you would also have a math class or a class where they would say, instead of just learning math, we're going to have you build a plane out of balsa wood and try to get it to fly. And you're going to have to use the right measurements and everything to get it to fly. So everything you did was around a subject. And instead of having strict classes, you just learned your English and science and history that pertain to that subject. Same thing in art. When you went into art, you would have math that centered around mathematic art or the history of art or anything like that. They also had a robotics stream that I wanted to get into, where you literally learn to program and build robots, which I wish I had.
Cool.
I wish I would have gotten into, but obviously a bunch of kids in middle school being told they can build robots, that was the most competitive stream to get into, and I didn't make it. So yeah, it was an experience, a very, very different type of school, and I think we need more schools like that school because it functioned very well. But that's why they had the shadow program, because they wanted to bring a kid in to say, hey, if you're going to a school, do you want it to be this one? Because some kids don't function in that kind of environment, because most of the time they've learned in the very rigid environment. But for me, I went, anything that can possibly get me out of this school, please do. I would love to. So the other bit of culture shock is when I got there, I saw kids that had earrings. I saw kids that wore baggy clothes. I saw kids that didn't have their shirts tucked in, which obviously that sounds like normal run-of-the-mill stuff. But at PCA, that was the stuff that you got punished for. You didn't have your shirt tucked in, you got punished. You had anything other than a plain shirt, you got punished. If you had a graphic on your shirt, then you were distracting the class, punishment. Very, very, yeah. PCA was interesting.
Fuck.
And dumb. Was not a huge fan. But so I had this huge culture shock getting into school. Not to mention, I didn't know how to talk to anybody when I got to the school because I wasn't allowed to. So I spent the first year with my head down on my desk anytime that there were group activities, because ability to socialize was not something that I ever learned. I had to just kind of...
Oh, you were being told to shut up all the time, right? Like, you keep quiet, you can't talk. Yeah, so I get that. Also, there does seem to be a theist here in the chat. As for the question that Reese asked for there being a theist in the chat, I see no problem with there being a theist in the chat, because I would see no problem with a theist watching my videos. So I would see no problem with a theist being in the chat. But they did ask a question earlier. Yes, why do atheists complain about their past or history? After all, it's just molecules in motion. Well,
So there's this
Everything is
there's this
molecule.
weird everything is molecules in motion. You can have that viewpoint whether or not you're an atheist. Like you can be a physicist, know how everything operates down to the quantum level. You obviously won't understand the quantum level because the best joke in quantum physics is that if you think you understand it, then you don't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a lot like how Yu-Gi-Oh ruling works. If you think you understand them all, you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
But so you can have that viewpoint whether or not you're an atheist. That viewpoint has nothing to do with the question of whether or not God exists. Because even if God exists and he constructed everything from molecules and then put them into motion, bada bing, you still have only molecules in motion at that point. So I understand that question stems from the viewpoint that atheism is somehow conflated with nihilism, which we hear all the time, that it's not. And he then said that this is the last thing that I'll answer from this person, said then there's no objective good or bad, you just evolved to think that way. I understand that I evolved to think a certain way, and I've come to terms with that. I'm also I'm a moral anti-realist. So as far as I'm concerned, you can have objective morality, and I have no problem with that. You can also have subjective morality, and I have no problem with that. So even in theism, divine command theory is listed under ethical subjectivism. I think trying to parse morality into either objective or subjective is just a giant error on literally anybody's part, and just a modicum of reading will basically show you that this conversation's been going on for millennia. Nobody's found an answer to it yet. Asserting that yours is the right one is fallacious at best. But that's the last that I'll answer to that particular individual. I just wanted to make sure that they knew that as far as I'm concerned. I know this is not my channel. I have no issue with them being here, but that's as much as I'm going to.
I don't have an issue either. Anyone is welcome to watch these videos. Maybe they might hear something that might help them along. Who knows? But also with morals and ethics and stuff, for me, I've noticed that throughout history, morals have been fluid. They've changed, right? And it's still that way today. They might have a cannibalistic cult somewhere living in a jungle that eats people, and you and I look at eating people as a bad thing. They don't.
True,
but them, they're like taking on the soul or the spirit of that person when they eat them.
But even that would be falling under moral relativism, not moral subjectivism.
Sure. Well, it's still subjective to them.
That's the thing about like reading into the actual conversations about morality that makes this a really weird conversation. So even with that still can be an objective moral framework, because all objective morality cares about is whether or not there is an object that you can parse that morality onto. For instance, your objective moral standard might be a fictional character who has a code of honor that you particularly espouse. That can be your objective moral standard. That's still an objective moral framework. It's subjective in reference to literally everything else, and it's subjective in reference to the character, because obviously any writer can make that character do whatever they want. This is the same issue you find with divine command theory, but that still ends up being an objective moral framework. That's why the conversation gets so muddy and strange.
Sure, it does. You're right. It does, because people, I guess, have their own ideas about this sort of thing.
Yeah, it's almost like the whole idea with philosophy is everybody having their own ideas about sorts of things.
Pretty much. I would agree with that for sure. I mean, I've always just considered, like, when somebody says to you, how can you possibly have a moral code without a deity of some kind? I said, well, I do, and I don't need a deity.
I have a social contract with literally every other functioning human being in society. That social contract says that if I do something that would not be harmonious. Oh, he's DD. Oh. Well then, anywho. I don't know why I catered. No, there's no reason to block.
Okay.
If he's actively causing problems, then I mean, it's your channel. You can.
He's not. He's just conversing, pretty
Yeah.
much. And I don't think his opinion's going to change on much of this stuff. So
yeah, probably not. If he's just here to spout his opinions, then that's his thing. If he's here to legitimately listen, that's his thing as well. Past that, I'm not worried about him. I was saying something. I completely forgot what it was now.
Sorry, dude. And we kind of went off track again, but that's okay. We're allowed to address some questions.
Yeah. All the questions in the world. Well, I can't remember what I was thinking about, so I'll just roll back to the school stuff. After the culture shock that middle school was, I ended up going into high school, and in high school, I would hope I ended up going into high school. It'd be really awkward if I didn't. But in high school, we actually had I went back into basically more of a normal school. It was still a magnet school, but no more of the like weird, here's your subject styled curriculum that Brown Barge had. When I went to that school, I no longer had the culture shock problem, obviously, because I had grown accustomed over the last 3 years. My ability to socialize was still screwed, though. Like, that's going to be screwed forever. I have no idea how to socialize. That's never coming back. That was ripped away from me as a child. It's not.
What? You seem to be fine to me.
Yeah, you've never seen me.
Like when well, no. At least I don't remember. Were you at YCS 100?
Not YC. The only YCS that I've been to in recent memory was YCS Atlanta 2013. I believe it was 13.
It's around the same time.
That was
because I was at YCS 100. So
that was when I got to piss off Patrick Hoban. That was a wonderful experience.
Hobie.
Making Hoban upset is like one of my favorite things.
Right.
Anytime you have a chance to do it, just do it.
Oh, I knew people that love to do that too.
Yeah, he's a dick. He deserves it.
I know. My buddy Tyler Langus would always, every time he played him, he would just grind the guy into the ground. So it just pissed him off every time.
He's playing me like, well, I'm just going to play Rabbit today, so I can say no a lot to make him upset. But anyways, high school was a little smoother, but I did get involved a little bit in the atheist-theist debate at that point. Only very, very marginally, though. Mainly because a friend of mine attempted to convince me that I was not a Christian and deconvert me by showing me the film Zeitgeist, which...
Oh, what? Really?
At first, like, it didn't do anything for deconverting me, because I was just like, even if all that's true, if Christ died, then I'm still a Christian, so whatever.
Yeah.
Also, Reese, the kittens are doing great. They're finally eating solid food. One of them's actually sleeping right next to my foot.
Oh, my buddy just got 2 kittens too. 7 weeks old now. Yeah.
Awesome. But yeah, he tried to show me the film Zeitgeist, which at first it basically like turned me into a conspiracy theorist for a good couple years.
Oh,
I was just like, oh yeah, the loose change theory for 9/11. That's got to be true. Everything else makes sense. But it didn't turn me into an atheist. And he was just like, well, have you read the Torah? It's a fascinating book. And I'm like, yes, I've read the first 5 books of the of the Bible. But that's the Pentateuch, but still. So
it's actually, just so you know, because I was raised Jewish, it's actually pronounced Pentateuch. You have to put the at the end there.
I don't have enough French in me to have enough phlegm in my throat for that. So I'm
a quarter French.
I'm okay with not doing that.
Okay, say then it would be Pentateuch. I see. I can't do it without doing that, so it's kind of funny.
How's it going, Shane? By the way, so with that conversation that we had, making me watch that video, did not deconvert me. And as I grew up, I started researching the actual like source methods of that video and learned that there's not a single ounce of peer review in any of the statements in it, and most of the things that are said in that movie are false. If they're not false, they're exaggerations to the point where they might as well be false.
That's kind of what I thought, more of overly exaggerated stuff. Well,
especially every single time somebody hands me the the meme that shows the comparisons between Jesus and Horus, I just burst out laughing and go, "Ha! You took that from Zeitgeist." So like, well, I haven't seen Zeitgeist. Like that doesn't mean that's not where it's from. I even had somebody send me that. They were a pagan, and they said that, hey, this was appropriated from this. And I said, oh, was it now? And then I actually went through and took like most of the main claims that the person was using, like the Horus was the star in the east, Horus had 3 wise men, went through and showed actually none of that's part of his story.
No, I know.
Zeitgeist lied to you. Zeitgeist lied to you a lot.
The one story I think from the Horus mythos that does kind of tie into biblical is, I believe, if I remember correctly, because when I was in Egypt, we were talking about this, he was put in a reed basket and floated down the Nile, but that was akin to Moses more than Jesus.
Yeah.
The princess put him because Osiris was going to kill him. So the princess hid him in a basket and floated him up the river or something, and some people picked him up or some shit.
Yeah, Jesus's story was a bit different in that the flight from Egypt was a little more, a little less mythical and a little more believable. Putting
a baby in a basket down a river is believable, but the baby
surviving is not.
True enough. Depending on how long he's stuck in the little raft, right? So
yeah, whereas a mother holding onto a child on a horse is a little more believable to me than, or the baby's survival is more believable to me than the baby's survival on the river.
Sure, I would agree.
Yeah, little, very, very different chances of survival there. But anyways, so that did not deconvert me. All it did was give me a lot of wonderful stories about watching that movie, and cringeworthy ones at that. Later, when I broke out of school and started working, getting in the work environment, I still labeled myself a Christian, but I stopped reading my Bible for the most part, and I only did like peripheral studies on Christianity. When I started looking into it more, I kind of got to the point where I said, well, maybe the Bible's bullshit, because the more I read about the contradictions in the Bible and the more that I went in and said, wow, Matthew and Luke actually don't agree with each other on the lineage of Jesus through David. Right. Like going through all that just kind of made me go, well, maybe the Bible's bullshit, but if Christ died for people's sins and resurrected, then I'm still Christian. I still believe in the Judeo-Christian God. After a while, though, it just kind of became the classic, well, I actually don't believe anything in the Bible, so why am I
clinging on?
Yeah, what am I basing my belief in the biblical God on at that point? So now I just view the Bible as a skewed history document at best. There's a little bit of decent philosophy in it, again, at best. So I don't really deal with it much more past that.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's some stuff that we could, put to use, like that we could all read and feel good about and put to use. But most of it, to me, is just it's mythology, just like all the other ones before it.
Yeah, and I have no problem with treating it as a book of decent mythology. In fact, actually, when somebody asked me, what my favorite Greek god was, and I said, well, it was Zeus, but it's because of a story that happens during the Injustice timeline of DC Comics, not from any of the actual mythology. And they were just like, wow, your favorite deity comes from comics? And I said, well, if it's all fiction, then I grade it, pretty similarly across the board.
Yeah.
So I'll take that particular Zeus.
Right. I like the Thor from the Marvel. So
yeah. So ultimately, I had kind of a slow organic deconversion where I never had an epiphany. I didn't have a Shannon Q moment where I read the Bible and then got to the nasty bits and threw it across the door.
That's what she told me too.
Yeah, I haven't had any of those those big moments. It's a very boring story in that it just kind of happened over the course of a few years. But
it's
when
not boring.
But when
what you're retelling is could very well help somebody because they're, I can identify with what he's saying, which is kind of why I do these, kind of hoping that it does help people. Anyway, sorry.
But what ended up happening later is as I went and said, okay, well, I'm a little more agnostic. I didn't really consider myself an atheist. But I also didn't understand fully what those terms meant. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, he goes by the philosophical definitions, I believe.
Yeah, and I was sitting in the, well, I guess I'm agnostic atheist, like not even realizing how dumb it is to hyphenate that. So I just kind of accepted those at the time, but now I definitely don't. But ultimately, I started. It was when I was working at Publix. I started listening to, because I had just a headphone and YouTube Red, so I started listening to Holy Kool-Aid's videos, Godless Cranium's videos. Cosmic Skeptic was another one that I was listening to a lot back when he uploaded a lot of content. Now he's got that collagen stuff that prevents him from doing that.
Collagen? What?
College, not collagen, college.
Oh, college. I thought you meant he's injecting collagen or some shit.
He's injecting collagen. He's injecting collagen to make himself the perfect human being.
Yeah, he's done a lot of work with Truth Wanted, and he's been on I think Talk Heathen and stuff. So because he's in their area, so.
But he also hasn't been able to do a lot on his channel, which makes me sad because I like his stuff. Although he did start a war with Rationality Rules, a war that's significantly less entertaining than the one that me and God the Scion have had lately.
The peanut butter wars.
Tomorrow there is another upload on that, by the way.
Oh boy,
so it's going to be interesting.
It's going to be fun.
I'll actually send you a sneak peek link to it so you can take a look at it. But I can't actually make it public until tomorrow. So everybody in the chat can get jealous that Neil gets that.
Anyways, this reminds me, now that you brought up the peanut butter thing, Nadine wanted me to ask you if you were familiar with Kraft peanut butter. We have a peanut butter up here in Canada called Kraft.
I've not actually had Kraft peanut butter before, but I think that because of the way my position is framed, that my opinion on it doesn't matter, because my opinion is that when Peter Pan is the peanut butter of choice, the better choice is literally anything else. Kraft into the literally anything else category. So I'm fine.
Well, I think down there you guys have it under it's like our squirrel peanut butter is known as Skippy down where you guys are.
Yes.
And I think our Kraft is known as Planters peanut butter down there.
I've had Planters, so I probably have actually had it at that point. And my opinion is that it tastes like good peanut butter that doesn't have a shit ton of oil. So which is the gripe I have with Peter Pan.
Oh, see, I just mixed that in because I cannot get it. Every time I go to the States, I have to get the honey roasted peanut butter by Peter Pan. Because we don't have anything even remotely close to that shit up here. So I mean, we can get Reese, which is always awesome.
I'll take Nutella when I can.
Oh, really? I love the Reese peanut butter. Fuck. I don't know. That's just me.
Well, as for the next saga in the peanut butter fight, people will have to tune into my channel tomorrow to see. This one's going to be very special. It's mostly been political campaigns up until this point. This one's going to be quite different.
This ought to be funny as fuck. I've been laughing my ass off through this whole thing. You guys are just too funny.
There's actually been some people who've been upset at this because they're
really?
They've been saying, hey, I get that you think this content is funny, but now you just seem like you're the salty one, and neither of us are salty. We're having fun. And they're just like,
it's called acting, people.
They're just like, stick to your normal videos. And I've made it a point on one of my recent videos is like, hey, my normal videos come out on Mondays and Thursdays. If the video did not come out on Monday and Thursday, it could be anything. If it's a video coming out on Monday and Thursday, it's probably going to be the content you subscribed for. If you don't want to watch anything else and you want to make sure that it's not going to be something that you're not used to before clicking in, a really good way of figuring that out is, did it come out on Monday or Thursday? No, it could be anything, and you're opening that grenade.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my other side of that is it's my channel. If you want to moderate one, get your own. That would be my other stance on that.
Yeah. You don't like what you're seeing? You could leave or start your own fucking channel and put your own content out.
Yeah. Well, it's just like there's certain things in the skeptic community that I didn't like. As I started to read more and more on philosophy, I realized that there were a lot of people that were asserting that certain things operated certain ways, but you couldn't verify any of that. You couldn't look up any of that in any type of literature. It would simply be the thing that they were asserting. And that upset me, but that's fine, because instead of just being upset about it, I made a video on it, which was actually a rant. And that rant actually was mainly in response to people getting mad at the Godless Island for saying he was going to cover philosophy on his channel. They got upset at that. And I'm like, but why? If you don't like it, just don't click. It's not hard.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no reason to fucking spew out your vitriolic fucking nonsense just because somebody's doing a topic you don't like. Just don't tune in.
Well, it's like Non Sequitur Show. I don't give a shit about flat Earth. But when a topic on Non Sequitur Show that I do like comes on, I watch.
Yep. I'm there.
But if a topic that comes up that I don't care about is on, I don't watch.
Exactly.
Because I'm not a mindless automaton, and I can make that choice.
Yep.
But speaking of YouTube, so YouTube Atheists made me want to make a channel because I wanted to do similar content. Originally, I didn't think that I had what it takes to do any type of cinematography or anything like that. But when I started watching like Godless Cranium and Viced Rhino, those were the big ones, that made me realize that, I could just use an avatar. And then Armored Skeptic made me realize I could also animate that avatar and do things with it. Whether or not I have, positive opinions on Armored Skeptic, that's its own conversation. But I do like the way he animates himself, and I have tried to take a little bit of that. Also, Apologia, how he makes his avatar blink. I was just like, I like the setup he has where the video's in the side and his avatar blinks as he's looking at the audience. So I said, well, I'm going to make my avatar look at the video when it's playing, but I am going to have the blinking that Apologia has. There were also a few other aesthetic choices that I decided on. Like, I didn't want there's something Viced Rhino does where when he's citing a source, he'll show his article on the video and it'll overlay across the entire video. And I said, well, I don't want that to be something that I do. I want that to be something that's, on the side, that it looks like my avatar is presenting it. It's not like pasted over the fifth dimension on my avatar. I just ended up taking that as my stylistic choice, just kind of taking the things that I liked from all the various skeptic channels and putting them into the one that I built and saying, hey, if there's something that I didn't like particularly about what somebody did on their video, I just won't incorporate it into mine. Because they have their own style, they can do their own thing, and I respect them all for it. Except Godless Island, because he likes the wrong kind of peanut butter. That's unforgivable. He'll burn in hell for that. That's fine.
Oh yeah, but he'll be eating lots of that peanut butter while he's burning. It'll be very weird.
Not really. His tongue will burn off because of the massive amounts of oil. Oil in a fire, and what happens?
The thing that you get a lot of that with a lot of the natural peanut butters too, like Adams. You get a lot of oil on the top, but you just mix it in, man. That's all you gotta do.
But Peter Pan isn't one of those, and it still has it. It's a heavily processed peanut butter that still has it.
Maybe that's their shtick. Like one of the peanut butters we have up here has a peanut sitting right on top, so that's their shtick. And
you know what? That's great. Much like with YouTube, I can simply choose not to consume and then bitch about it on my channel.
True enough. True enough.
And that's what I do.
There you go. That's awesome.
It wasn't until Godless Cranium made a video that actually got taken down and a bunch of YouTubers ended up posting it up called Imagine a World Without Religion, where everybody gave what their version of a world without religion was. And at first I said, oh, this is okay. But then I forget which YouTuber it was mentioned that, politically there's been a huge drive against certain stem cell researches that would actually help them with a chronic condition they have. And most of the motivation behind not allowing that research was done by Christian fundamentalist politicians.
Yes.
Who were citing their side of the argument being, the natural law and God's order and all that fun stuff. And that's when I actually got angry. Like at that point, I was mad.
Yeah, that stuff pissed me off too.
So I ended up posting the video on my channel as well, because that's what they asked to do when the video got taken down. And that was the second video on my channel, was that repost. So it was very early on in my channel's life. And I went through a bit of an angry atheist phase on my channel. The first 10-ish videos on my channel are I'm not very proud of the person I was when I made them. Let's just say that. I've gotten.
Well, it's part of your history now, but
it is. Granted, I have gotten that angry again in my rant video, but now I've realized that when I am that angry, instead of showing it in my educational videos, I have a separate type of video that's designated for strictly that type of thing. That way people know what they're getting into when they hop into that. If the video says rant, chances are I'm angry.
So you'll be yelling about something.
Yes. It also means that whereas normally I try to censor my speech a little bit and try to filter it, on those videos, no. You can come in and there will be swear words and there will be lots of yelling, and you may or may not fit into the category of one of the people I'm angry at, and if it sounds like I'm directly insulting you and you fall into one of those categories, I am. Which is very different than the way I do my videos.
You need one of these to go over. Explicit content.
Well, I do have a verbal warning. That's good enough.
Yeah, same thing. Pretty much.
At least let people know.
I was thinking, I'm trying to find a meme I can make, because Iowan's doing that meme contest.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first things that popped into my head is that I always thought was just the fucking craziest thing ever, was the one where you see Jesus's guiding hands to the surgeon. Because, all those years of school mean nothing, because now Jesus is there guiding your hands. So
by that logic, you should be able to put anybody in there and they should perform equally well.
Exactly. That's sort of the idea I was going to have, where I could make one. And somebody did make one, which I also was kind of different than the idea I had. But it says, "What the fuck? Why are you taking away that tumor? I put it there." Right? So, which I thought was pretty funny too. Anyway, where were we? So you're now at the point where you are. I do have a question for you though.
Sure.
When you finally figured out that you were an atheist, or at least in the agnostic side, did you tell your family right away, and how did they take it?
So I dropped little hints that I thought that the Bible was bullshit. For instance, I would say, "Hey, Mom, did you know about this story in the Bible where Lot is raped by his daughters in his sleep?" Just little things like that, and it would spark just a mini conversation, but nothing really past that. How I ended up coming out to my family, it was I had a video called "A Message to My Christian Family," and I posted that on my channel. And that was during my angry phase. So needless to say, the backfire from that was immense. I was told that I
seem to recall that.
I was told that I was spitting on our family's legacy. That because our family is a very Christian family, like very Christian. So I was told that I was spitting on our family's legacy. And that, a lot of things I said were unwarranted. And then when I was told, hey, we're not going to judge you for your beliefs, but you're being an ass, it was just, I was in that snarky, angry phase. So instead of accepting that, I said, actually, you'd be judging me for my lack of belief. Just constantly correcting that, being a dick, which was definitely not the way that I should have gone about that, but it no less is the way that I did. So if anybody out there wants to come out to your family, I am the golden standard of what not to do. Don't do that. Don't do it.
Don't be a dick to your family. I mean,
Yeah.
we pretty much do that most of our lives anyways, so I try not to do it in this particular instance.
Yeah,
I can't say that for everyone.
Like if you watch it, if you want to be a dick to your family, then by all means, I can't stop you. I would just hope that your family was a dick to you first, so that you can at least say that you were justified in what you did.
I don't recommend being a dick to your family anyways. They're the ones that you're going to have to rely on at some point. So
I'm the type of person that says that the amount of respect that you give me will generally be the amount of respect that I give you.
Makes sense.
It will be, I will give as much as I can up until that point. But as soon as you've done something that causes me to not have respect for you, then you may as well be talking to a different person from that point onward. Because when I'm not being cordial, I can be quite vitriolic. So
glad I haven't seen that side of you yet. At least not directed at me.
not directed at you, but you have probably, if you've seen the video I did where I was talking to Pragmatic Culture, that is where that side of me came out. Not just like the rant video where I'm speaking into a microphone and yelling, but that is me actually having that side of me being spoken to a living, breathing human being. That video with Pragmatic Culture is where that comes into play. So if anybody wants to know what it's like for Suris to be mad at you, that is how it is like generally.
that's yeah, like I felt the fire from that one.
I would hope so. I was very mad. And it was one of the first times that I let anybody on my channel after I, calmed myself down. It was one of the first times I ever let anybody on my channel really see that side of me again, because I've tried to temper it and make sure that, hey, if I'm on here on YouTube and I'm trying to do a thing, then I don't want to undermine my position by being a dick. Because I think that if you're being a dick intentionally, most of the time you're doing nothing but undermining your position. And even if you're right, people will dismiss you because you're being a fucking ballsack.
True enough. Well, we're closing in on it. Well, actually, we didn't start till 10 after because we were doing some Yu-Gi-Oh chat, just so you guys know. We're being immature and childish, but we're playing children's card games. Anyways,
Joey loves children's card games.
You've played more than I have. I mean, I played Weiss. I played the Yu-Gi-Oh. I never really got into the Pokemon. I played Magic for fucking years when it first came out.
Mm-hmm.
Those are pretty much the three that I've dabbled in. And that card fight one, I played that for like 3 weeks, and I was like, nah, I'll stick to Yu-Gi-Oh. Yu-Gi-Oh's expensive enough, man. I don't need more expensive cardboard to throw my money at,
That's why what I've done is I've said for Magic, I play Magic Arena because I don't have to spend any money on it. Hearthstone is obviously its own game that you don't have to spend money on if you don't want to, and I have a love-hate relationship with it.
Yeah, it's fun though.
For Yu-Gi-Oh, I just play GOAT format because it's stable. The only times that I ever have to spend money on it, now that I've reconstructed my collection after it got stolen, the only times I have to spend money on it now are when I've got a new deck idea that I want to test out, and I have to pick up those cards for it that I don't currently own. But I don't have to worry about a new set coming out. And in fact, some of the cards for GOAT became less expensive over time, like Delinquent Duo got a reprint. So that's no longer a $30 card, preventing people from getting into the fucking format. And then,
I know. It was really expensive for a while. I think it was running at its peak. I think it was $50.
Yeah.
If you had the Ultra.
And that was while it was banned.
Yeah.
Only because of GOAT players.
What about Chaos Emperor Dragon? That sucker's way up there again.
Well, Chaos Emperor Dragon's not legal in GOAT, so I can't speak for it.
No, true. But, I mean, that's another banned card that is out of control expensive. And, man, I had an original first edition IOC copy of that. And like an ass, I sold it for, I think, $20 at the time because it wasn't expensive. And then months later, it shot right up again.
Imagine how it feels to the people who offloaded their Trishulas for a couple bucks. Before they shot back up and became super expensive.
Yeah, still got mine.
Yeah, just I ran Trishula and Heraldic Beasts because it was hilarious.
Yeah.
A glow up bulb just pops up and goes, "Hey, I'm making Trish today."
Yeah. Glow up. Glow up was a great card. I think that's still banned though, isn't it?
I think it's been rebanned. Yeah, it came off the ban list for about a year, and then Konami realized that they were being very head ass when they did that, so they fixed it.
Still too broken.
I also have Kitten again now. Because why not? But yeah, between Yu-Gi-Oh's GOAT format and Weiss is a stable card game. If you pick your anime, you can generally pick an anime that doesn't get a lot of sets released for it, so that you can play a stable game and don't have to worry about new sets coming out all the time. So they're expensive to break into and get a competitive deck, but once you have one, you don't have to do a whole lot more after that unless you want to, which is good. As opposed to Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic, where it's like, oh, I didn't keep up with the last set for the last 3 months. I guess I'm screwed.
Yeah, but Magic, they tend to, once cards are past a certain age, they don't allow them in the game anymore.
It's the
they can't use the first second.
Yeah, they have a block system where blocks stop being usable after a certain amount of time.
Right.
And I'm fine with that system over what Yu-Gi-Oh does, because what Yu-Gi-Oh does is functionally the same. Cards become irrelevant after about 2 years anyway. It's just the nature of the beast. But because Magic at least cycles its stuff out, you have the opportunity to play cards that are not power crept into oblivion.
Right.
Which is, Hearthstone does the same thing for the same reason.
Yep. Yeah, I've only played very little Hearthstone. Like literally, I was just for a few months, and I when I got my new phone, I haven't downloaded it yet again. So eventually, I will and kick that back in. But I think I'm going to start a new account, do something different.
I would just use your old account because you can just keep all the cards that were on it, and dust them and stuff. That's just me.
Well, it's been a while since I played, but yeah, maybe I'll do that. It's just right now, the things that's going on with me have just become insanely busy around here. So
fair enough.
So it's tough for me to get a moment to do something like that anymore.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And my company and this now and family ordeals and just things in general. The band. I mean, I'm a pretty busy guy. When I get free time, I like to sit and watch hockey and drink beer. That's what I do with my free time right now.
Yeah, there is always certainly an amount of time that you have to be cognizant that you're spending. It's like whenever somebody says, "Hey, have you tried this video game out? It's free." And you say, "Well, I really don't want to." They go, "Well, why don't you want to? It's free." It's like, well, yes, it is fiscally free. I do not have any fiscal trade-off for picking up this game and giving it a shot, but I do have a time trade-off. And if I want to use that time and spend it elsewhere, then,
time is money.
Taking away the $ from the game does not stop me from not wanting to spend my time on it.
That's right. Is there anything else you wanted to cover before we call this one quits? And by the way, I usually do after parties. I'm not sure if you have enough time to jump into that for a little bit, but if you are interested, I'll copy the link as well.
I might be able to. I just need to check on dinner because I've been cooking dinner this whole time.
Oh,
I have a pot set on very, very low that is currently
like a crock pot.
Actually, it's just spaghetti sauce. I am slow cooking a special spaghetti sauce. I've been doing so for the past few hours.
Oh wow! Jeez, I kind of want to try it now. I like it when they slow cook the sauces.
Yeah, it's got minced garlic, chopped onions, a bunch of herbs, diced tomatoes, and just a tiny bit of MSG. I'm not kidding.
Flavor.
I'm not kidding. I actually have a box of MSG that I use.
It's a flavor enhancer.
Yeah, it's great. Well, it's a savory flavor enhancer. It doesn't work very well for any other flavor.
Well, true enough. You're right. It's a mix of sugar and salt. It's combined molecules of sugar and salt. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's what makes tomatoes not taste sweet. It's what causes that, because otherwise they're berries like any other berry.
Mm-hmm. That's right. But tomatoes produce their own naturally. So
Yes. But anytime somebody freaks out about the chemical, I'm just like, do you eat tomato? Yes. Okay. Tomato is chock full of MSG. It's literally the only reason it doesn't taste sweet. Not to mention, you can always take a little bit of MSG and like put it on their finger and say, "Hey, try this. It tastes like how savory feels, and only that's it."
Exactly. I've never actually just tasted MSG on its own.
If you taste MSG on its own, it literally just tastes like the idea of savory. Like if you have an idea in your head of what a savory tastes like, that's all MSG is. It's just that idea and only that.
Enhances it.
Yeah, it's just that idea. That's it. It's really weird. I regret doing it. Like washing the taste out of your mouth and going, "Oh God, I'll put that on things," but by itself, no.
Yeah, not so much.
Yeah, it doesn't operate very well as its own individual. Also, hold on.
Oh, I guess he's being paged by the other half.
I've been Pam was wondering if me and my roommate want to come in order to get some groceries, and I mentioned that I'm cooking, so no, I'm not. I'm willing to be on stream a few feet away from my kitchen because I can make sure that things are okay, but I'm not willing to leave the house while that pot is going.
Yeah, no, that's generally not a good idea.
Yeah.
So before we close up here, dude, is there anything else you wanted to mention at all?
I guess the first thing I would mention is if you don't have as many likes as you have viewers, then your viewers need to kick their asses into high gear and hit the like button.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
that'd be the first and foremost thing. The second thing is I can tell you right now, if I look at this, let's see, you've got looks to be 8 likes, but you've got 22 watching, and that's a cardinal sin. So yeah.
Well, I can't force anyone to tap the like button. I can only merely ask them.
I have hammers. I can force people.
This is true, but I don't have hammers anywhere near the size of the ones you do. But I do have this. But that could be misconstrued. But I do have this. And I will send this fucking thing your way if you don't hit that like button.
You just throw it.
Yeah. It's a javelin with a big ass skull on the end of it. That's actually part of a Halloween costume I bought some years ago, and I can't wear it since that first time I wore it because when I put it on and walked upstairs, my buddy's little girl literally peed her pants and cried. Right there when she saw me coming up with that on. I felt absolutely horrible. And I whipped the mask off, and it's just me, because I'm like one of her favorite people at the time. So when she saw that, she literally screamed, and I saw she was peeing her pants. I scared her that much. And I cannot wear that costume again.
My grandpa used to put on a Jason Voorhees costume to scare the ever-living crap out of me as a kid.
Really?
I hadn't even seen Friday the 13th. I just knew that I was supposed to be scared of it.
Of the mask? Yeah, I've dressed as Jason a couple of times because I have this giant machete with blood all over it and stuff. Mm-hmm. I have the mask. I made the mask myself. I got one of the glow-in-the-dark ones you could buy. And then I cut from movie number 3 where he gets hit with the axe, and there's the cut in the top of it. And I put all the red marks and the dust and shit all over it and made my own mask. And people were like, oh, that's pretty good. Somebody said, please tell Suris that I envy his Ranma and a half poster.
That's not somebody, that's Faye, Neil.
Faye. Oh, yeah, well, I just noticed that now.
Wonder Lady.
Brent wants to know why you're not eating.
I'm not eating because I'm cooking. As for the poster, thank you. This poster was actually given to me by my friend Edgar, who got to see Rumiko Takahashi at a convention and got a bunch of those posters. Rumiko Takahashi is the author who penned Ranma 1/2 and Inuyasha. But he got to meet, I believe he got to meet her, got a bunch of those posters and posted on Facebook and said, hey, does anybody want it? And I was just like, that was my favorite anime growing up. Give now. And
Ranma?
It's been, yeah, Ranma.
Oh, cool.
If you've now granted, it's It's not an anime that a child should watch. It's it's a sexual comedy. It's an incredibly sexual comedy, but it's great. It's a wonderful show.
His other one was more tuned to younger crowd. Inuyasha.
Inuyasha definitely was more tuned to the younger crowd, the more shonen actiony stuff.
It was fun, but I could only make it through one season.
Inuyasha's that show that, like, after a few seasons, you ask, "Hey, is Naraku still after the Shikon Jewel?" Yes. How many shards were there supposed to be? Like 20-ish. How many have they collected? About 50. Okay, cool. That's why I'm not watching anymore.
That's actually a really good point.
It's like, how many times have they killed Naraku? Yes. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Again and again and again.
Yeah, I got very tired of Inuyasha. It's not that it's a bad show. It's just that it never stops.
Yeah. And it always seems to center around the same fucking plot over and over again.
Naraku did a thing. He got the villain of the week to get a piece of the Shikon Jewel to power it up. You better use the Tetsaiga, and you better hope the Wind Scar hits. Oh, the Wind Scar didn't kill it? It never kills it. Are you surprised? And halfway through, Sesshomaru loses an arm. There we go. We've given you the entire plot of Inuyasha.
Yeah, you don't need to watch it now. However, his sword, I would really like to have that. What is it? Tetaku? Yeah.
Oh, Sesshomaru's?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, what the hell is it called again?
I don't remember what Sesshomaru's is called. I just remember that Inuyasha's is Tetsaiga.
Tetsaiga, that's the one I'm thinking of. Anyway.
Yeah, I will say this. I'm upset that if you've ever played Monster Hunter 3, in Japan, the Tetsaiga was a weapon that you could actually get. But in America, they couldn't get the license because Inuyasha is held by a different licensor here. So they had to reskin it and name it a Tenebra, and it looks completely different. But it's still a tiny sword that comes out of a tiny sheath and becomes big when you pull it out. So you're like, I know this is supposed to be Tetsaiga. But
that doesn't sound suggestive at all.
I mean, if you've ever played Final Fantasy VII, the giant sword is totally not a penis.
Anyway, all right. So, on to the pervy anime stuff now. We'll wrap this up. So, Suris, my brother, thank you so much for jumping in here with me and telling me your story.
No problem.
Of course, we sidetrack, as usually it happens when I'm talking to people.
I'm fine with getting sidetracked. I already have this deconversion story as a video on my channel, so I would hope it gets sidetracked.
So if you want to know, like, from the horse's mouth, well, not that you're a horse, but you can go to Suris's channel. I do have a link in the description below. If you aren't already subbed, you really should, because he makes fantastic content. He's been one of my favorites for quite some time now as well. So go and sub to him if you can. And again, brother, thank you so much for doing this. And thanks to everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. We've had some fun here ourselves. We've had all the card games and the anime and the peanut butter, and everything's been involved in this one. And I'm going to do a after party afterwards. And Suris says he could probably jump in for a little bit. So, but he is making some spaghetti, and I can't blame him to want to hurry up and go eat some, because spaghetti's awesome. But I will be going till about 7 o'clock, because after that I'm heading downstairs to watch the hockey game and have a few beers. So, anyways, that's the plan. Anyway, because a friend of mine's birthday was yesterday, and he was a little sick yesterday, so we're gonna go finish off all the Chinese food with him tonight too.
Gotcha.
So,
hey, I have 2 bits of Chinese food on my shoulder right now.
What do they call it? I can't remember. I can't remember. My buddy Mikey calls it that all the time. Something meow.
Meow foon.
Yeah, something like that. Egg food meow or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, really bad humor, because I love animals. So
I do too. We have 6 cats now, thanks to these 2. Yeah. And as soon as we move, we're getting a dog.
Awesome.
I
haven't had a dog in a long time. I need to get one. We have 2 cats here. They're my roommates. The last pet I had that wasn't a cat was some tarantulas. So, and fish. I had fish.
I would love to have a tarantula, but I know Pam would kill me. And I'm just like, their fangs bend when they try to bite, so you don't have to worry about being poisoned.
That's right.
They're fluffy, and they're actually very amiable to humans. Like, they're friendly.
Especially the more dociles,
Yes.
like Chileans and red knees and red striped knees and stuff. Like they're very docile.
Yeah.
Pink toes. Just stay away from some of the ornamental Asian rainforest ones, and stay away from. Well, I had one many years ago, a Goliath bird eater. Don't irritate them, because they will do something called striation, and that is where they rub their back legs on their belly and they send all these basically like fiberglass hairs into the air. They get in your eyes and your nose and your mouth and in your skin, and it sucks. I've had to deal with that twice in my life, and I don't want to do it again.
There's some cacti in Florida that operate the same way, where they look like they have no needles, but as soon as you brush on them, the little fiberglass particles get in your finger, and you're pulling them out for weeks.
Yeah, literally the same thing.
Yeah.
Not so much weeks, but it was definitely a few days I was dealing with that shit. Anyway, once again, thanks everyone. Thanks you, Suris. And as I always say at the end of these, remember, kids, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. And we'll see you guys next time.